Code switching, students in formal versus informal settings. This research was conducted by first-year students Ashling Mahony, Simone Baeza, Sofia Martin, and Taylor Bollenbaugh for the 2022 Undergraduate Research Symposium at the University of Oregon. For this project, we chose to look further into the details of how specifically college-age students change their lexicon and grammar in formal versus informal settings. This is known as code switching, alternating between different languages or varieties of the same language in a single conversation. Code switching is most commonly observed among bilingual and multilingual speakers. However, for our research, we chose to look at code switching through a sociolinguistic perspective. This perspective focuses on the dialects, accents, language combinations, and mannerisms within a single language domain. All of these things help speakers form their identity, attitudes, and opinions. These different varieties of a language offer different functions for its speaker as well. Before conducting our research, we spent time reading through relevant literature to see what past studies have suggested about code switching. A study conducted in 2012 observed formal and informal code switching in Nairobi, Kenya. The research found that speakers code switch in an attempt to exhibit their level of confidence and domination in a given environment, as well as when they desired a need for social integration and approval. It is believed that formal codes are typically used to convey a more official and respectful context, whereas informal codes are typically used to convey a more relaxed and familiar context. Overall, there is no doubt that code switching is a powerful psychological tool and incredibly important to the efficiency of communication in many social groups. Our primary goal with our research was to apply these suggested functions of code switching to assess the efficiency of online and hybrid education following the COVID-19 pandemic. We are asking, how does a change in environment affect the ways in which college students code switch on academic questionnaires?
For our methodology, we decided that the best way to gauge responses was to create a survey. Our survey included a few open-ended questions on a topic that most students could relate to: online schooling. Some examples of these questions asked were, what do you like the most about online education? What do you like the least? Or which method do you prefer? And the questions were all the same on each questionnaire. We had it set up to where the informal survey was shared on social media and the formal paper questionnaire was handed out in classrooms. We received 31 online responses and the same amount of written formal responses. The responses have been as expected.
For our results, we looked at what we were gonna assume before the survey. We discussed the possibility of the responses we would get from the survey and assume that they would be in formal language frequently used more than formal language, since the survey was anonymous and people would tend not to take it as seriously as they would if it wasn't anonymous. And the responses were mostly informal language with slang and poor grammar. These sentences were incomplete or run on as if the person was using online language like text or internet slang. The responses were with formal language had good punctuation and more proper and full sentences. So to the left, we can see our visual graphics, and these words that were regularly used in the survey by the participants. The bigger the word shows how much more frequently it was used throughout the survey, and we can see how internet slang such as LOL was used repeatedly, and the word which shows informality, which are one of the bigger words on the visual graphic. And then under the first visual image displays the words that were considered to be formal words because they add more description and are more proper words. We noticed how there was less repetition with more descriptive words and how they are fairly the same size. It was just super interesting to see the range of words used throughout the results. And I would also like to mention how the in-person results seem to have a more complete answers with paragraphs and fuller responses with a lot more formality. And this could be explained since it was administered in a classroom.
After looking at our results, we can see a difference in the responses between formal and informal settings. Hybrid learning has created an academic environment that is formal yet informal. Before the COVID-19 pandemic, most students were used to attending classes in person, but in recent years, everything has been switched to completely online, whether it was through students attending class through Zoom calls or completing homework assignments on a computer instead of pencil and paper. When students code switch in response to a change in setting, The type of language they speak reflects their attitudes and interests. The COVID-19 pandemic has undoubtedly transformed many students' attitudes toward education. From our survey, we can see how the attitudes of students have clearly changed. Their language shows us that online has affected their motivation and learning retention, and overall producing a new negative attitude about switching to asynchronous classes. Code switching also depends on how people feel in certain environments. These responses have shown that some students feel comfortable enough to use what is considered improper grammar and slang words, and their responses in informal settings, while in formal settings, they use full sentences with language that has been deemed more appropriate. In conclusion, we would like to thank Melissa Baesberg for her support and help with distributing our surveys. We would also like to thank the University of Oregon and the Undergrad Research Symposium for the opportunity to present our research. Thank you for listening.